USA Warrior Stories is a not-for-profit organization designed to record, archive, and share videos of veteran stories, to help veterans make a connection with one another and to help us all better understand their sacrifices for our freedoms.
Well, I grew up in Sag Harbor. It's my hometown. I graduated from Pearson in 1968. I always saw men that had served in the Women's Auxiliary very much involved in a lot of different things that were going on in Sag Harbor. So it was a big part, very patriotic sense here in Sag Harbor that was also instilled in me. Boys State is run by the American Legion throughout in all of the 50 states, and I was chosen when I was a junior to go to Boys State here in New York, and because of that, West Point probably sends out to every single young man that goes to Boys State an information packet. They had an application, so I filled it out and I sent it in, and you need a congressional appointment from your local congressman or senator or governor, and eventually I did get a nomination from Congressman Pike here in Suffolk County.
No picture of young American leaders would be complete without a look at the United States Military Academy at West Point.
One of the things that I mention often about my experience at West Point is learning how much one can actually accomplish in a day's time, because we were up at 6 o'clock in the morning for a plebe. It's lights out at 11 o'clock. The day is filled with going to classes, and after classes, everybody participates in either intramural sports or intercollegiate sports. Evenings were spent doing homework and spit shine our shoes, get our uniforms ready for the next day. The late 60s and early 70s were a very tumultuous time in the United States. We went through all of those things that history has recorded, from the assassination of Martin Luther King to John Kennedy's assassination to Bobby Kennedy's assassination. It was a time of tremendous change and really set the tone for what we experienced as cadets at West Point and later on as Army officers. While you're at West Point, every summer you have a month off. That's the only time, that's really the only vacation time that we had. And the other 2 months were spent in some sort of training. For example, during Beast Barracks, the first 2 July and August that you're there, it's of course being introduced into Army training and rifle. Then your second summer is at Camp Buckner.
For 8 weeks during their second summer at West Point, cadets get a workout at Camp Buckner, about 7 miles from the academy. Here they receive a varied program of training, emphasizing special military skills. This is the only portion of their 4-year course that concentrates on the purely combat aspects of leadership.
Then in the third summer, you actually go out to different posts around the country. I for example, was out at Fort Ord, California for 2 months. And again, it's just trying to learn leadership and being a part of an Army unit. We also then do visit the combat arms facilities around the country, whether it's Fort Sill, which is field artillery, or Fort Benning, Georgia, the home of the infantry. And we go around to each one of them so that we get introduced into each one of those branches to find out exactly what they do, because then in our senior year we decide which branch of the Army that we want to be in. I chose the Air Defense Artillery. So after graduation from West Point, I went to Fort Benning for jump school. And I was there for a week, and then I had to leave to go to my next assignment, which was training at Fort Bliss, Texas. And I was there for 4 months, getting trained in the Hawk missile system. I left in December, and then in January I went back to Fort Benning and got my jump wings. And then directly from Fort Benning, Georgia, I then went over to Germany, and I was stationed initially at a small village called Illersheim, which is about an hour south of Würzburg, Germany. Würzburg is a fairly large city in Germany, right between Frankfurt and Nuremberg. We were there, hopefully, if the Russians decided to invade and they sent over waves of aircraft, hopefully we would be able to take some of them out and protect Germany and actually all of Europe. That would have been a challenging task because it would not have taken long for the Russian fighters to be in our territory. But anyway, we were part of the deterrent that we had over there during that period of time. Of course, the Berlin Wall was still up. And I remember I went to training at Grafenwehr, which wasn't not too far from the border. And when you see the actual fence that was put up between East Germany and West Germany, and you see the guards that are there, you understood what your mission was at that particular, they thought one way and we thought the other, and we were there to try to protect our interests. And then after a year or so, I was sent back to the Defense Race Relations Institute. Back then, in the late 60s, there was incredible amounts of racial divide going on in the country, and certainly that existed within the military as well. I'm really proud to have been a part of the Race Relations and Equal Opportunity Program. It was the Army's effort to try to right some wrongs, and I was a part of that. And just overall, wearing the uniform of my country made me extremely proud. I ended up running for office here in Suffolk County for county legislature. I was doing that for a couple of years, then ended up working on the county executive staff in Suffolk County, and ultimately became the liaison between Suffolk County and the state of New York, essentially the lobbyist for Suffolk County. And then I ended up working for the town of Southampton as the Human Services Director for about 6 years before I retired in 2012. Once I had established myself back here, and it appeared that I was going to be around for quite a while, I was a member of the American Legion in Sag Harbor, participated in the Memorial Day parades and Veteran Day services. And then when I moved over to Southampton, I became a part of the Combined Veterans Organization. In 2004, the World War II Memorial was dedicated in Washington, D.C. And there was a gentleman by the name of Earl Morse out in Illinois. He worked at a hospital. He was an Air Force veteran. And because he worked at the hospital, he had a lot of World War II patients. And he would ask them, "Are you going to see your memorial?" And they would all say, "Yes, we're going to go." And then 6 months later, he would ask them again, "Have you seen it?" And they would, of course, say no. And the light bulb went off, and he realized a lot of these veterans wouldn't go and see this memorial that had been dedicated for them. The mission of Honor Flight was initially to take World War II veterans to see their memorial. It has been so successful and so well received and has become such an important part of lives of many veterans that they have now moved on to taking Korean and Vietnam veterans, along with more recent conflicts, whether it be in Afghanistan or the Mideast. For us here on Long Island, it turns out it's a one-day trip. We leave MacArthur Airport, fly southwest into BWI, and then we motor coach from there to the memorial, and we have a number of other stops that we do. We do the World War II Memorial, of course, and then we go on to Arlington Cemetery, where we do the changing of the guard, which is always, a favorite for everybody. It's such a solemn and incredible experience and ceremony to watch the changing of the guard. And since it started in 2005, the Honor Flight Network has taken over 240,000, mostly World War II veterans, down to see their memorial. And then, of course, to listen to their stories and to be with them is so inspiring. And again, I'll just go back to how humble they are. For each one of our trips, we always ask our veterans to fill out a form. It's called Where and When You Served. I would just like to read, just talking about how humble they are. I'm just going to read just a little excerpt from Eleanor Rizzuto, and she was an Army nurse who spent a year in North Africa. World War II started in 1942, and a unit from the hospital was organized, made up of doctors and nurses, to be sent to Africa. Eleanor was one of them, but did not like it, as they were on a dusty hill in tents, and every day a dust storm or rain occurred. She was stationed in North Africa for 1 year, taking care of the injured soldiers. Next, Eleanor and her unit transferred to Naples, Italy. They set up hospitals and tents in an old bombed-out buildings. And during her time in World War II, she did spend time on the front lines, which was quite dangerous. As the Army advanced, so did her unit, setting up hospitals along the way up to Udine, Italy, until the war ended in 1945. These are the kinds of things that we get to experience by being a part of Honor Flight. Go to our website, which is honorflightlongisland.org, all one word, honorflightlongisland.org. We hope to continue Honor Flight for as long as there are veterans that want to take it. I guess I would just say that, having been in the military, of course, is a huge part of my life. And I just am proud to continue to be a part of the Memorial Day services and Veteran Day services. I think those are all important to continue to recognize those who have served and certainly those that have sacrificed their lives on behalf of our country. I certainly believe our country is well worth that sacrifice. And then Honor Flight is just the icing on the cake for me to be a part of that organization and to have that impact that we have had along with all of the volunteers that have helped put this together and make it happen. Proud of them as well. So I think that kind of wraps it up for me.